Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. We've only got 3 more chapters. Alright, chapter 7. Issachar. The sons of Issachar. Tola, Pua, Jashub, and Shimron, 4 in all. The sons of Tola. Uzi, Raphael, Jeriel, Jamai, Ibsam, and Samuel, heads of their families. During the reign of David, the descendant, that was 600 years before the chronicler wrote, the descendants of Tola listed as fighting men in their genealogy, list numbered 22,600. That could very well be a reference to the military census that David made, which you write about the end of 2 Samuel. I don't know, but I mean, it seems like it. Because we know that David did make a military census, and this is during that reign of David that we get this number. So these genealogies are being pulled from all kinds of places. We had a reference earlier to the genealogy of the Reubenites that came from the days of Hezekiah, and then the fight they had against the Hagrites in the days of Saul. Actually, Hezekiah was the Simeonites, excuse me. And then here we have genealogy that's coming from the days of David. And again, David lived around 1000 BC. This guy, the chronicler, is writing in the late 400s BC. That was about 600 years earlier. So somehow he had access to that. I don't think he had access to all 22,600 names, but he knew about that. He had access to that information that had been recorded. The son of Uzi is Izrahiah. The sons of Izrahiah: Michael, Obadiah, Joel, and Ishiah. All 5 of them were chiefs. According to their family genealogy, they had 36,000 men ready for battle, but they had many wives and children. So some of these records that this guy is getting are coming from military censuses. Not all of them, but some of them. These are, certainly. The relatives who were fighting men belonging to all the clans of Israel, as listed in the genealogy, were 87,000 in all. 3 sons of Benjamin: Bela, Becher, and Jediel. He had more sons than that, and we'll cover the Benjamin genealogy in more detail in a couple of chapters. This is just kind of a preview for now. The sons of Bela: Ezban, Uzi, Uziel, Jeremoth, and Eri, heads of families, 5 in all. Their genealogical record listed 22,034 fighting men. That's an exact number. The sons of Becher: Zimri, Joash, Eleazar, Elionai, Omri, Jeremoth, Abijah, Anathoth, and Alameth. All these are the sons of Becher. Their genealogical record listed the heads of families and 20,200 fighting men. The son of Jediel, Bilham. The sons of Bilham: Jeush, Benjamin, Ehud, Kenana, Zethon, Tarshish, and Ahashahai. All these sons of Jediel were heads of families. There are 17,200 fighting men ready to go out to war. The Shuppites and Huppites are descendants of and the Hushites are descendants of Aber. The sons of Naphtali: Jaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shelam, the descendants of Bilhah. And that's all we read about Naphtali. Naphtali is gone, apparently. We read about in 2 Kings just a moment ago how Naphtali was one of the territories taken early by the king of Assyria, and apparently they were gone more or less for good. They didn't seem to come back from that captivity, so we don't cover them in too much detail here. Actually, practically no detail at all. The descendants of Manasseh: Asriel was his descendant through his Aramean concubine. She gave birth to Machir, the father of Gilead. Machir took a wife from among the Huppites and Shuppites. His sister's name was Maacah. Another descendant was named Zelophehad, who had only daughters. You read about him at the end of the book of Numbers, and the predicament that having only daughters put his family in. Machir's wife, Maacah, gave birth. I don't know if that's his sister or a wife that had the same name as. He said his sister's name was Maacah. He may have married his sister. It's possible. Or it could just be another woman who has the exact same name. I don't know. Gave birth to a son and named him Peresh. His brother was named Sheresh, and his sons were Ulam and Rakim. The son of Ulam, Bedon. These are the sons of Gilead, son of Machir, the son of Manasseh. His sister Hamoleketh gave birth to Ishahad, Abiezar, and Malah. The sons of Shemida were Ahan, Shechem, Likhi, and Aniam. The sons of Ephraim. So Shethulah buried his son, Tahath his son, Elidah his son, Tahath his son, Zabad his son, and Shethulah his son. Ezer and Elian, I guess those are sons of Ephraim, even though they're not mentioned in that list, were killed by the native-born men of Gath when they went down to seize their livestock. So, if you don't want to get killed, don't try to go see someone else's livestock. Now, apparently, so Gath is going to end up being one of the major Philistine cities. And David's going to take refuge there for a while. And so we're going to read about Gath. This seems to be before that, because this is in the days of Ephraim himself, living in Egypt still. So this is early. This is like in the 1600s BC. Probably even before the Philistines got to Gath. So this is apparently the people who lived in Gath before the Philistines got there. And this seems to be happening in the lifetime of Ephraim himself, and that would have been in the 1600s BC most likely. This is way back. Way. Even in the days of the Chronicler, this was 1200 plus years ago. This is way back. Ezer and Eliad were killed by the native-born men of Gath when they went down to seize their livestock. Their father Ephraim mourned for them many days. This is again occurring in the days of Ephraim himself. Ephraim was the son of Joseph, and Joseph was in Egypt in the 1600s BC, so this is a long time ago here. And his relatives came to comfort him. Then he lay with his wife again, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. He named him Beriah. There's a footnote down here saying Beriah sounds like a Hebrew for misfortune, because there had been misfortune in his family. His daughter was Shirah, who built Lower and Upper Beth Horon, as well as Uzzen Shir. Now that's an amazing accomplishment for a woman. So I don't know how this girl, Shirah, ended up doing this. I guess she bore the sons who did it. There's no commentary or information on that here, because you don't often hear these cities attributed to daughters. I'm guessing she bore the sons who built these towns, but who knows? I honestly don't. Rapha was his son, Resheph his son, Telah his son, Tahan his son, Ladan his son, Ammihud his son, Elishama his son, Nun his son, and Joshua his son. Their lands and settlements included Bethel and its surrounding villages, Meron to the east, Gezer and its villages to the west, and Shechem and its villages all the way to Ayah and its villages. Along the borders of Manasseh were Beth, Shan, Tanakh, Megiddo, and Dor, together with their villages. The descendants of Joseph, son of Israel, lived in those towns. The sons of Asher. Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, and Beriah, their sister was Sarah. The sons of Beriah, Heber and Malchiel, who was the father of Berzath. Heber was the father of Japhlet, Shomer, and Hotham, and of their sister Shua. The sons of Japhlet, Hasak, Bimhal, and Ashvath. These were Japhlet's sons. The sons of Shomer, Ahi, Roga, Hubal, and Aram. The sons of his brother Helam, Zophah, Imnah, Shelish, and Amal. The sons of Zophah, Sua, Hamathur, Sorry, Hamathur, I didn't mean to offend you out there, wherever you are. Shual, Beri, Imrah, Bezer, Hod, Shema, Shilshah, Ithra, and Bera. The sons of Jether, Jephunneh, Pispa, and Ara. The sons of Ulah, Arah, Hanael, and Rizia. All these were descendants of Asher, heads of families, choice men, brave warriors, and outstanding leaders. The number of men ready for battle, as listed in their genealogy, was 26,000. Okay, we're nearly there. We've got one more chapter of genealogy to go. And then we've got a little bit more after. We're so close. Can you feel it? We're almost done. Chapter 8. We have a heading here that tells us this is the genealogy of Saul, the Benjamite. So we talked about Benjamin in chapter 7. Now we're going to get a more detailed look at the Benjamite genealogy, because this would produce Israel's first king. Benjamin was the father of Bela, his firstborn, Ashbel, the second son, Ahara, the third, Noha, the fourth, and Rapha, the fifth. The sons of Bela were Adar, Gera, Abihud, Abishua, Naaman, Aboa, Gera, Shephuthan, and Hiram. These are the descendants of Ehud, who were heads of families of those living in Geba and were deported to Manahath. Nama, Ahijah, and Gera, who deported them, and who was the father of Uzzah and Ahihud. Sons were born to Sharahaim in Moab after he had divorced his wives Husham and Bara. By his wife Hodesh, he had Jobab, Zibiah, Misha, Malcolm, Jehu, Sakiah, and Mirma. These were his sons, heads of families. By Husham, that was one of his divorced wives, he had Abitub, and Elpaal. The sons of Elpaal, Eber, Misham, Shemed, who built Ono and Lod, the surrounding villages, and Beriah and Shema, who were heads of families of those living in Ajalon, who drove out inhabitants of Gath. I don't know if it's the same guys that Ephraim lost his sons to or whatever, I don't know. Ahio, Shashak, Jeremoth, Zebediah, Aaron, Eder, Michael, Isphah, and Joha were the sons of Beriah. Zebediah, Mershalam, Hizki, Heber, Ishmerai, Isliah, and Jobab were the sons of Elpaal. Jacham, Zikri, Zabdi, Elionai, Zelathai, Eliel, Adiah, Beriah, and Shemarath were the sons of Shimi. Ishpan, Eber, Eliel, Abdon, Zikri, Hanan, Hananiah, Elam, Anathothjah, Iphthiah, and Penuel were the sons of Shashak. Some of these names are even harder to pronounce than others because the lines break in the middle of the names. So I have to read two lines in order to read the full name, and I have to stop and say, okay, what is this now? Sham, Sheri, Sherahiah, Athaliah, Jarashiah, Elijah, and Zikri were the sons of Jeroham. All these were heads of families, chiefs as listed in genealogy, and they lived in Jerusalem. Jeiel, the father of Gibeon, lived in Gibeon. That was the name of the town. We're going to get to Saul. That's where Saul was from. His wife's name was Maacah, and his firstborn son was Abdon, followed by Zer, Kish, Baal, Ner, Nadab, Gedor, Ahio, Zeker, and Mikloth, who was the father of Shemaiah. They too lived near their relatives in Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem did not come under the Israelites' control until David, who was after Saul. This is before Saul. This genealogy is leading up to Saul. So this is a period of time in which they didn't actually have control of Jerusalem. These people apparently lived in and around Jerusalem. And Jerusalem was under Jebusite control still at this time. So they must have lived there commingling with the Jebusites, because the Israelites themselves would not control Jerusalem until into the reign of David. And that's after Saul, and this is all before Saul. So they too lived near their relatives in Jerusalem. Ner was the father of Kish. Kish the father of Saul. And Saul the father of Jonathan, Machlishua, Abinadab, and Eshbaal. And in the account in Kings, it's called Ishbosheth. His name actually was probably Eshbaal, which means Baal or Baal is a word for Lord. Of course, there's also a reference to the god, one of the common gods, the bull god in that area. So his name probably was Eshbaal or Eshbaal. In Kings, they call him Ishbosheth, which means man of shame, which would not have been his actual name. And so you have to remember, and I mentioned this before, there are times in these Old Testament narratives when you read names assigned to people, and those probably weren't their actual names. Okay, we see an example of this right here. In the account we read of this at the beginning of 2 Samuel, the son of Saul that tries to take over his kingship and fights David for a few years is called Ishbosheth, which means man of shame. But that was not his actual name. His actual name, as we see here in Chronicles, was Eshbal, which has something to do with Baal, the god of that area. So the writer of Kings overwrote that guy's actual name because it was named after Baal, the fake god Baal, with the name Ishbosheth, and means man of shame. And he gives no indication that he's doing that. When we read about that in the account of Samuel, as given in the history of Samuel, the writer of that book is giving no indication that he is obscuring the son of Saul's actual name. So there are other instances where we can assume, or at least guess, that sort of thing happened, where someone's actual name is obscured by an epithet that someone is writing, and we don't know what that person's actual name is. So when we look at the historical record that exists out in the archaeological records, we may not be able to find the names that the Bible uses for some of these people because those weren't their actual names. You have to keep that in mind. The son of Jonathan was Merib-Baal. So even Jonathan named his son after one of the Baal gods, who was the father of Micah. That is the Mephibosheth. We read about him. That's the one that David took care of. But even he was named after Baal, a Baal god. The sons of Micah, Python, Melech, Teriah, and Ahaz. Ahaz was the father of Jehoiada. Jehoiada the father of Alameth, Asmaveth, and Zimri. And Zimri was the father of Mosa. Mosa was the father of Beniah. Raphath was his son. Eleazar was his son. And Azael was his son. Azel had 6 sons, and these were their names: Azrikam, Bokeru, Ishmael, Shariah, Obadiah, and Hanan. All these were sons of Azel. The sons of his brother Eshek: Ulam, his firstborn; Jeush, his second son; and Eliphelet, the third. The sons of Ulam were brave warriors who could handle the bow. They had many sons and grandsons, 150 in all. All these were descendants of Benjamin. Okay, we're almost there. One more chapter, 1 Chronicles 9. All Israel was listed in the genealogies recorded in the book of the kings of Israel. The people of Judah were taken captive to Babylon because of their unfaithfulness. Now the first to resettle on their own property in their own towns were some Israelite. Now we're going to read about that. So once we get done with 1 Chronicles 9, we're going to skip ahead to the end of 2 Chronicles and the beginning of Ezra to pick up the narrative from when they come back to the land. So that here we're getting that, a preview of that. The first to resettle on their own property in their own towns were some Israelites, priests, Levites, and temple servants. Those from Judah, from Benjamin, and from Ephraim and Manasseh who lived in Jerusalem were Uthai, son of Ammihud, the son of Omri, the son of Imri, the son of Bana, a descendant of Perez, son of Judah. Of the Shilonites, Asaiah the firstborn, his sons. Of the Zerahites, Jeuel. The people from Judah numbered 690. Of the Benjamites, Salu, son of Meshullam, son of Hodaviah, son of Hashanuah, Ibniah, son of Jeroham, Elah, son of Uzi, son of Mikri, and Meshulah, son of Shephathiah, son of Ruel, son of Abnijah. The people from Benjamin, as listed in their genealogy, number 956. All these men were heads of their families. Of the priests, Jediah, Jehoiab, Jachin, Azariah, son of Hilkiah, son of Meshullam, son of Zadok, son of Merioth, son of Ahitub, the official in charge of the house of God. Adiah, son of Jeroham, son of Pashur, son of Malchijah, and Masai, son of Adiel, son of Jazariah, son of Meshullam, son of Meshemeleth, son of Immer. The priests, who were heads of families, numbered 1,760. They were able men responsible for ministering in the house of God. Of the Levites, Shemaiah, son of Hashub, son of Azrikam, son of Hashabiah, a Merarite, Bakbakdar, Hera, that's a name we haven't seen before, Haresh, Galal, and Mattaniah, son of Micah, the son of Zikri, son of Asaph, Obadiah, son of Shemaiah, son of Galal, son of Jeduthun, and Berechiah, son of Asa, son of Elkanah, who lived in the villages of the Netophathites. The gatekeepers, Shallum, Akub, Talmon, Ahiman, and their brothers. Shallum, their chief, being stationed at the king's gate on the east, up to the present time. These were the gatekeepers belonging to the camp of the Levites. Shallum, son of Kor, the son of Abiasaph, the son of Korah, and his fellow gatekeepers from his family, the Korathites, were responsible for guarding the threshold of the tent, that is the temple. Now we're talking here about the territory where the temple is going to be. Okay, all right, so let's set the context here. These are the people who came back to the territory after the destruction. Okay, so we've done these genealogies leading up to this first batch of resettlers who are returning to Jerusalem from Persia, from Babylon, wherever they had been. Okay, so they are taking care of the place again. So these are the gatekeepers. Right now there are no gates. Okay, right now the city is in ruins, the temple is in ruins. So they're just standing around a spot where the temple will someday be. Okay, they may even have put up a tent there, like the old tabernacle, maybe. So we're not talking about the tent in terms of the old tabernacle. We're talking about the tent in terms of whatever they have set up as a makeshift meeting place before they actually build a temple. Because right now there's no temple. So that's what these gatekeepers are guarding, whatever temporary structure they set up before they built the actual temple. So they were responsible for guarding the threshold of the tent, just as their fathers had been responsible for guarding the entrance of the dwelling of the Lord. So again, we're trying to establish that continuity with the past here. In earlier times, Phinehas, son of Eleazar, was in charge of the gatekeepers, and the Lord was with him. Zechariah, son of Meshelemiah, was a gatekeeper at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Altogether, those chosen to be gatekeepers at the thresholds number 212. They were registered by genealogy in their villages. The gatekeepers had been assigned to their positions of trust by David and Samuel the seer. Now, Samuel himself had nothing to do with the assignment to these positions because he was dead before they started this. David was the one who had this idea. And so this is just an ancient way of thinking, okay? Samuel appointed David, and so he's given credit for assigning these gatekeepers, even though he actually did not do that. That's just how they thought. Like, to them, that made sense. That's just how they thought. That's why the book of Samuel is named after Samuel and not David, okay? Samuel dies in chapter 25 of 1 Samuel. He doesn't even make it to the end of the 1 Samuel, and he's not in 2 Samuel at all. So why is the book named after Samuel? Well, it's because he anointed Saul and David, that's why. It should be David. I mean, honestly, in terms of who the main character actually is in those books, the books should be named after David, 1st and 2nd David, but they're not. Because Samuel anointed David and Saul, so the book is named after Samuel. That is how the ancient mind worked. Okay? We don't think of it that way these days. We don't. That's not how our minds work. But that is how their minds work. So Samuel had nothing to do, actually, with the assigning of these gatekeepers. That was David's task after Samuel had died. But because Samuel anointed David to be king, he is retroactively given credit for being involved in this decision, even though he actually wasn't. They and their descendants were in charge of guarding the gates of the house of the Lord, the house called the tent. The gatekeepers were on the four sides, east, west, north, and south. Their brothers in their villages had to come from time to time and share their duties for 7-day periods. But the four principal gatekeepers, who were Levites, were entrusted with responsibility for the rooms and treasuries in the house of God. They would spend the night stationed around the house of God, because they had to guard it, and they had charge of the key for opening it each morning. Some of them were in charge of the articles used in the temple service. They counted them when they were brought in and when they were taken out. Others were assigned to take care of the furnishings and all the other articles of the sanctuary, as well as the flour and wine and the oil, incense, and spices. They couldn't actually prepare that stuff. Only the priests could do that. But they could take care of it when it wasn't being used. Some of the priests took care of mixing the spices. A Levite named Mattathiah, the firstborn son of Shallum the Korahite, was entrusted with responsibility for baking the offering bread. Some of their Kohathite brothers, remember the Korahites? They were the ones who tried to rebel against the leadership of Moses and Aaron back in the day, in the book of Numbers. So, not all of them were bad, I guess. Here's a descendant of one of them, and who was entrusted with responsibility for baking the offering bread. Some of their Kohathite brothers were in charge of preparing for every Sabbath the bread set out on the table. Those who were musicians, heads of Levite families, stayed in the rooms of the temple and were exempt from other duties because they were responsible for that work day and night. So the professional worshipers, the musicians who sang and played instruments in the temple service, were doing that all the time. And because they were constantly on call for that, they were not exempt. They were exempt from whatever other duties they would normally have. I'm guessing this refers to those who actually had musical aptitude. If you were a descendant of Levi, whether you were a Kohathite, a Merarite, or a Gershonite, and you had musical aptitude, you could, because there were descendants of all three sons of Levi in the worship team. So I'm guessing that this was based on your musical aptitude. If you were able to sing and play instruments, you were a member of the professional worshipers. And so you were exempt from whatever duties you were naturally born into as part of your genealogy. That's what it seems like to me, at least. All these were the heads of Levite families, chiefs as listed in their genealogy, and they lived in Jerusalem. Okay, we made it. We're done. There is one more genealogy in 1 Chronicles 9, but that's just a genealogy of Saul, and that leads up to the narrative of Saul's death in 1 Chronicles 10. We've already read that, because we read the rest of Chronicles. We saved the first 9.5 chapters, or 8.5 chapters, for last. So we're not going to read that, because we've already done that. Oh, we're done. Oh, yes, we're done with the genealogies of Chronicles. Okay, start a new video.